This clip's brought to you by ServiceNow. AI is only as powerful as the platform it's built on. With the ServiceNow AI platform, your AI, data, and workflows all work together, connecting every corner of your business. To see how you can put AI to work for people, visit servicenow.com/AI-agents. So obviously the story of the week, the year, the last 2 years on the men's side is Alcaraz Sinner. It does not look like that storyline will change. The space between them is slim, if there at all, and the space between them and the rest of Earth seems large. Banks, is it getting larger?
Try not to be I don't want to just jump in and say it's getting larger, but it's
more established.
It's certainly large enough already.
Yeah.
It's solid. There's a solid gap there. I think the reason I'm hesitant to say it's getting larger is because, granted, I was a kid, you were playing at the same time. I felt like there was a bit of that Roger Rafa for a while, but that elevated the rest of the tour. Like, guys got better as a result of it. So we may not be able to see the gap kind of closing, and we see these two as like superhuman, which they obviously are. I just don't want to be a prisoner of the moment and go, oh, they're running away from the field. Like right now, they're already far enough away. Now it's up to the field, which will happen at some point, that they will start to close that gap. But yeah, they are clearly the top two guys right now. I think, the other players know it. I think media knows it. And it's, it's a fun time to be a tennis fan.
And sure. we want to level set off the top. Obviously, Sinner beats Alcaraz in the World Tour Finals. Alcaraz gets the year-end #1 ranking. Phenomenal. Like, there's not enough superlatives. And now the way I judge this, Banks, I'm curious to hear your opinion on this, is we're now getting to the point, like, with Roger, Rafa, Novak, if you ever said something nice about one of them, right, and you're like, oh, well, they need, maybe Carlos doesn't do well indoors. It's like you have Sinner fans going, well, he needs to deal with it. Like, yeah, there's kind of, they've both gotten good enough to where everyone's angry all the time of something nice said about one of these two champions. Carlos, well-deserved, #1 in the world, wins slams basically every year now. And Sinner almost snuck out the world #1 ranking, having missed 3 months. Like, these two are just absolutely phenomenal what they've done this year.
Yeah, it's especially to see Jannik come so close after missing those 3 months, missing, 6 big titles? Like, and to still, obviously, Carlos edged him out. Carlos was able to get him at Roland Garros, was able to get him at the Open, but it's just such a fun kind of rivalry because not only are they producing great tennis, but they're also alternating on the results. Who's winning? It's like Sinner's dominating in Roland Garros, and Alcaraz comes back, finds a way to win it. Crazy. Now, the next time they play, Sinner is able to topple him at Wimbledon, a place that Carlos had won twice already. Now you come back to the U.S. Open. Carlos takes some time off. He tries to work on his game. You come back to the U.S. Open. Carlos wins in 4. Okay, now they're moving indoors. Sinner wins in straight. It's like you can't really get a good sense of, we can debate all day, who's going to win the next matchup. They play in Australia. I'm sure that's going to be the topic. Carlos, are we going to get to Carlos Sinner final? And Sinner's track record in Australia has been great. So I think a lot of people are probably going to pick him because we don't have enough information to go on coming out of the offseason. But you can make a good enough case that, if Carlos gets healthy, he'll be able to make adjustments to be able to win it, to counter Sinner again. Like, they're just alternating who's winning, and just the level that they are producing is it's fun to watch players at the top of the game like this, because I think the chess match is really, really fun to dig into, and the corrections that they are making and learning from each loss that one of them takes, they are able to kind of flip it, find ways to get better, and then to come out on top the next time. It's pretty remarkable.
It's great from a fan perspective, and you pick your tribe, but these guys are making each other better. And, I remember we did that flash podcast right after the U.S. Open where, like, all three of us were in random places, but right before that, Sinner went into the press room, and he was written down. He just said, look, I've got to adjust it. I've got to figure out a way to make my game better. I need to come up with some answers. And then you look at what happened in Turin, and he served a lot better. We saw a little bit of use of the drop shot. Maybe Alcaraz was injured, but good on Sinner for taking advantage of that. I think the one thing, this is a tremendous rivalry already. it's almost weird if they don't meet in finals now. But we're talking about Australia. Like you sort of rack your brain to figure out what one guy is going for the career slam Alcaraz, the other's going for his third straight title. Like, man, short of injury, what would have to happen for them not to meet in the final? I think the one thing, if you go back 20 years ago, you had Roger and Rafa, but you also had this elevating the rest of the field. And Djokovic is obviously the most obvious example of someone who said, wait a second, I know what I've got to do. Now I've got to go execute it. I want to be part of this party. But even, Andy, you and Murray and Jay, I mean, everyone else kind of raised their game. And I think we don't want to get too greedy. Alcaraz and Sinner are this glorious rivalry. I think what we're waiting for is somebody in the rest of the field to step up and say, I want this to be a three-way rivalry the way Novak did. I mean, going back to the point before, it's a really long staircase down to that 3-4-5 level, and that isn't just the eye test. I mean, that's statistically too. I mean, right now Zverev has fewer than half as many points at number 3 as Sinner does at number 2. I can't find a time. I mean, even I pulled up some of these old rankings from 20 years ago when Roger and Rafa were catching gears, and even at the height of Federer Nadal, it was never this big a gap between 1-2 and then 3-4-5. So if the rivalry effect on the two of them is tremendous, it's great now in 2026 if this rivalry effect catches on and impacts the rest of the field as well.
One of the things that you mentioned quickly, JW, and I don't want to gloss this over, and I certainly want Chris's thoughts on this. As a top player, right? I often say our strengths can become our weaknesses, right? You're stubborn. For Carlos, and I was wondering after Indian Wells, he loses to Draper and he walks in and he goes, I'm trying to find it. I'm insecure. I was nervous. I don't know that we've ever had two guys that are as honest about their deficiencies when the rest of the world doesn't see any, right? Like, so Sinner goes in post-US Open press conference. He's fresh off of, winning Wimbledon, right? And not really losing to anyone not named Carlos. And winning the Australian Open and almost winning, and he walks in and goes, I need to change a lot. That is an insane amount of self-awareness, and certainly a level of self-awareness that I never had, right? To know that you're, if not the best in the world, one of two, and to walk in straight in the US Open and have clarity about what comes next. Chris, that's not a normal thing for a player to have, especially that quickly after a defeat, right?
Yeah, but I also think that Jannik obviously has a phenomenal team around him. And I think having Darren, having Simone, I'm sure these are things that they have mentioned to him already of like, hey, maybe using a bit more variety. Darren, when he came on your pod, spoke about the conversation he had with Novak after Novak beat him at Wimbledon, saying everything is one speed. He's got to vary it up a little bit. Well, he was able to kind of make those changes. And for everybody else in the world, but not named Carlos, it's been good enough. But now you're coming up against that one guy who matches you from a movement standpoint. He has the firepower that you do. He has a bit more variety, a bit more feel, and that proved to be pretty costly in that U.S. Open. So now the guy also hasn't lost very much. I think it's a little easier to assess when you're on such a heater, and then you take that one loss, and you're like, what happened? It's like, oh, well, Carlos was coming in. He was mixing in the slice. He was finding his way in, kind of reinforcing the things that I'm sure, without speaking to him, Darren and Simone have tried to implore Jannik to do. But he's been dominant against everybody else in the world. So it's like, hey, maybe take a few risks and look to come in. You may get past, but it's going to work long term. I'm sure Jannik is a great steward and he listens. But when you're on the court and you're playing somebody and you're like, I know I can just out bruise this guy from the back and I'm going to win. It takes a special type of person to be like, you know what, I'm going to not care about the result and just try to get better. And maybe that loss to Carlos is what he needed, because we saw it here in Turin, not to jump ahead, but we saw some of those tactics that he spoke about in that U.S. Open press conference, looking to sneak in. We saw some amazing backhand redirects up the line, which I was like, geez, he's just firing the backhand up the line. But not just hitting it, he's taking that. Roger used to do it a lot. That kind of step forward, like, am I coming? Nope. And then he would kind of go back. You saw multiple times saying that Carlos was outstretched, and he had that kind of like split step of like, you know what? Nah, I'll go back. But he's looking to get his feet inside the baseline, looking to sneak in. It's like, oh, he's not just settling with being the best in the world right now. He's still looking at ways to improve. But I think a lot of that goes back to the team he has, and they're doing a great job of continuing to progress and wanting him to continue to get better.
The other thing that I noticed yesterday was Alcaraz in the U.S. Open final, and this is just to kind of belabor the point of these adjustments on adjustments on adjustments on adjustments. They're not making the same adjustments that they were 8 months ago even, right? So Carlos comes out at the U.S. Open, and he's coming in on shots that I don't define as approach shots.
I mean, just straight, just like, what are you, like, just running in on some of those balls.
I said, is that the next version of coming in, right? People, when the guys are so good now, and the technology with rackets and everything has created the ability to create spin at such a crazy amount, is this is what Carlos is able to do the next version of getting in, where he just takes a haymaker anywhere, comes in, and then, but the difference is, you and I, Chris, we're not good enough to adjust on the fly and pick balls off of our shoe tops and create a variety of shots, right? Because you kind of have to go in, and then at that point, you're playing street ball, right? You're adjusting
100%.
to what's in front of you. But Sinner saw what we saw at the U.S. Open. He saw what Carlos was doing. There was 6 or 7 times in that match in Turin, I say yesterday, it was 2 days ago by the time you listen to this, where he hit his passing shots just that much firmer, caught Carlos coming in on those shots. It's like, okay, that worked once in New York, but now I'm looking for it, right? And it's that constant cat and mouse. That was something that stood out to me yesterday, where Carlos tried it again, was coming in just, on a shot that looked like it was just a shot from the baseline. It wasn't. There was no invitation to come in.
Carlos had a serve and volley one time that was 2 feet inside the baseline, went forehand volley inside in, comes to net, and then closes like so tight with a forehand volley, blocks it up the line. I think Sinner went for the lob and missed it. But it was like serve, was kind of hanging around, landed in no man's land. He scoops it up with a forehand volley inside in, and then just full charges the net. And I'm like, what is this?
Yeah,
he won that. He won that point,
and he won the point. I was like, what is going on?